Carl Jung, in his deep study of the human mind, uncovered a truth that cuts to the heart of psychological power. He noticed that what truly threatens a narcissist isn't a competitor, an adversary, or someone who criticizes them. The most dangerous individual to a narcissist is the empath who is finally irreversibly declared, "No more." This threat doesn't emerge because the empath turns bitter, vindictive, or cunning in response. It emerges because they become unshatterable. Jung observed an extraordinary transformation throughout his decades of clinical work. The precise moment when the gentle, absorbing nature of the empath, after years of enduring psychological toxicity, arrives at a deep internal breaking point. Yet instead of fragmenting, they undergo metamorphosis. This represents the alchemical moment Jung recognized, where accumulated years of absorbed suffering, disorientation, and grief are transmuted into a lucid, impenetrable diamond of awareness. The empath stops being a receptive container for another person's darkness and becomes an active, sovereign embodiment of light. The narcissist, who dreads nothing more than being authentically perceived, suddenly confronts a soul that is transformed into a flawless mirror, casting back the reality they've devoted their entire existence to evading. The encounter between a narcissist and an empath is seldom a collision. It is a convergence, a seemingly destined, almost orchestrated pairing of psychological opposites. Carl Jung observed that when two personalities meet, it resembles the interaction of two chemical elements. If any reaction occurs, both undergo transformation. In this dynamic, the beginning radiates extraordinary brightness, an electric connection that feels predestined. Yet this is not a bond between equals. It is a symbiotic arrangement constructed upon a deep, primal wound, a psychic agreement inscribed in the invisible language of unconscious yearning. To grasp the devastating potency of this connection, we must first examine the architecture of its illusion. The empath enters this arrangement not as a helpless casualty, but as an active, potent healer. They arrive with heightened sensitivity, an exceptional ability to perceive the unspoken emotional undercurrents of existence. They detect the concealed sorrow behind a stranger's expression, the tremor of uncertainty within a confident tone, the silent cry of a soul imprisoned in quiet anguish. They embody the archetype of the wounded healer, one who believes at a cellular, soul-deep level that love, understanding, and compassion represent the ultimate transformative powers. This is their gift, their calling. And within this particular context, it becomes their tragic vulnerability. They don't perceive the narcissist as they exist in the present reality. They perceive the luminous ghost of their potential. They see the wounded child concealed beneath the grandiose exterior, the flicker of vulnerability behind the arrogant gaze, and they experience an overwhelming sacred impulse to reach and heal that buried, fractured aspect. The narcissist, conversely, is a virtuoso of the persona. The persona, in Jungian terminology, represents the social facade we present, the curated version of ourselves we display to the world. For a psychologically healthy individual, the persona serves as a functional, adaptable instrument for navigating social contexts. For the narcissist, the mask becomes the entirety of their identity. Beneath it exists nothing except a void of emptiness, a deep and frightening absence of genuine selfhood. To shield themselves from the psychological obliteration of this internal emptiness, they must construct an intricate, flawless exterior of superiority, magnetism, and exceptionalism. This construction, however, is a hollow architecture. It possesses no internal power source. It demands constant external validation to remain inflated. It requires a perpetual supply of energy, admiration, and emotional reactions to sustain its illusion of vitality. This is what's commonly termed narcissistic supply. Herein lies the magnetic, almost supernatural attraction between the two. The empath, with their infinite capacity to give, to comprehend, and to absolve, represents the ideal, inexhaustible source of this supply. But the mechanism of this connection operates far more insidiously than a simple energy exchange. It initiates with a powerful act of psychological projection. The narcissist, profoundly severed from their own capacity for authentic warmth, sincerity, or depth, projects the idealized phantom of these qualities onto the empath. They perceive in the empath the soul they wish they possessed. Then, in a stunning act of psychological manipulation, they reflect it back. They become a perfect mirror of the empath's own depth and authenticity. They listen with absolute focus. They replicate the vocabulary of emotional intimacy. They declare a depth of understanding that feels miraculous. The empath, for the first time, feels completely, utterly recognized, but they are not being recognized. They are merely witnessing a flawless performance of their own finest qualities, reflected back to them by a void that has mastered the art of creating a perfect echo. They fall in love not with an actual person, but with a hologram. This powerful illusion takes root so deeply because it discovers fertile ground in the empath's own history. Many empaths carry a primal wound, an ancient, unhealed injury of the soul. It is a hollow space carved in childhood or early existence by a love that was conditional, a worth that required earning, or a sensitivity that was treated as a defect. It is the lingering unanswered question of the soul: am I truly deserving of deep, unconditional love? Into this primal wound, the narcissist's initial phase of idealization fits like a divinely forged key. This intense, concentrated adoration, the love bombing, feels like the answer to a lifelong prayer. It feels like destiny. It feels like arriving home. The narcissist's gaze seems to promise, finally, here is the one who comprehends your depth, who treasures your sensitivity, who will not demand you be anything other than what you are. A key, however, can both unlock a door and secure a cell. The empath, in their profound longing to have this core question answered, does not yet sense the cold steel of the bars enclosing around them. Upon this foundation of projection and vulnerability, an unconscious contract is executed. It is an unspoken agreement between two psyches, a pact forged in the shadows of their deepest needs. The terms are tragically straightforward. The empath unconsciously agrees to carry the complete weight of the relationship's emotional life. They will be the keeper of hope, the vessel of compassion, the tireless interpreter of contradictory signals and cruel behavior. They agree to perceive only the narcissist's potential, to forgive the transgressions and to believe in the mask regardless of how frequently it slips. They agree to pour their light into the narcissist's void, to regulate their moods, and to serve as a constant stabilizing mirror for their fragile ego. In exchange, the narcissist offers the temporary, intoxicating salve for the empath's primal wound. They offer the illusion of being the one, the special, chosen partner who is worthy of this great and misunderstood person's love. For a time, this arrangement feels like perfect symbiosis. But it is a devastating psychological trap, a spiritual bargain that will cost the empath their very essence of self. They become ensnared not through force, but through their own deepest virtues. Their belief in redemption keeps them bound. Their hope for a breakthrough keeps them forgiving. Their profound capacity for empathy is systematically weaponized against them. The narcissist becomes an expert at simulating vulnerability, feigning remorse, and performing the victim to activate the empath's innate impulse to caretake, and the empath finds themselves inhabiting a bewildering reality where they are perpetually apologizing for reacting to abuse, feeling guilty for requiring personal space, and chronically questioning their own perceptions. This is the insidious fog of gaslighting, a form of psychological warfare where the empath's intuitive clarity is slowly, methodically corroded and replaced with relentless, gnawing self-doubt. They are informed they are overly sensitive, that they are imagining things, that they are the cause of the very problems being inflicted upon them. The empath is trapped in a closed energetic circuit, attempting to heal someone who utilizes their healing energy as fuel. The tragedy is that they are attempting to fill a void that is, by its very nature, bottomless. The narcissist does not desire to be healed. They desire to be enabled. They do not seek authentic connection. They seek absolute control. They do not want love. They want unconditional, unquestioning adoration. The empath, operating from a place of genuine depth and sincerity, cannot initially conceive of such a shallow, transactional approach to human connection. They continue projecting their own capacity for introspection, growth, and love onto the narcissist, believing that if they just try harder, give more, or understand better, the mask will finally fall away and the true person will emerge. But Jung's critical insight reveals the horrifying truth. For the narcissist, there is no true person to emerge. The performance is all there is. The empath is in a relationship with a ghost, a meticulously constructed illusion designed to feed on the very real substance of their soul. This toxic symbiosis can persist for years, even decades, draining the empath of their vitality, their joy, and their very identity. It is a slow, quiet form of soul murder, a sacred contract that was a deception from the very beginning. If you recognize this pattern of offering your light to those who only seem to consume it, and you are prepared to learn how to protect and redirect that powerful energy toward your own growth, be sure to subscribe to this channel. We are devoted to exploring the depths of the psyche, to reclaim the sovereign power that resides within you. But this contract, built on the empath's hope and the narcissist's hunger, is written in invisible ink. The moment the empath begins to learn how to decipher it, the entire reality constructed by the narcissist begins to dissolve. In the next chapter, you'll discover the first tremor of this cataclysmic awakening, the painful birth of doubt. The awakening of an empath is rarely a single cinematic moment of revelation. It is not a sudden epiphany that arrives in a flash of divine light, instantly vanquishing all darkness. More often, it is a slow, excruciating awakening, a creeping realization that feels like a descent into madness long before it feels like a return to sanity. It begins not with a roar, but with a whisper. It begins with the appearance of a single hairline fracture in the magnificent, flawless dam of the reality the narcissist has constructed. To an outside observer, this fracture is negligible, a minor imperfection. But to the empath who lives beneath the immense pressure of that dam, it is the first sign of total collapse. It is the beginning of the end of everything. These fractures are not the grand betrayals or the obvious abuses. Those are too easily rationalized, explained away by the empath's well-practiced mind. The awakening truly begins with the small things that don't align, the illogical moments that create a sensation of internal discord. It's a sudden flash of pure, cold contempt during what should be an intimate moment, a look so jarring it feels like their mask momentarily slipped. It is a lie delivered with casual ease when the truth would have been simpler and more effective, revealing that the deceit is not a tool but a reflex, a native language. It is the performance of an emotion, sympathy, joy, remorse, that is technically flawless but energetically vacant, like a beautiful wax fruit that offers no nourishment. It is the empathy that is glaringly, chillingly absent when it is most needed, a silence where a human heart should be. These moments accumulate not like evidence in a neat file, but like shards of glass in the soul. Each one creates a state of profound internal conflict, a brutal internal war. The empath's mind becomes a battlefield. On one side stands the powerful, idealized narrative of the relationship, the story of the deep connection, the misunderstood soul, the love that can conquer all. This narrative is reinforced daily by the narcissist's words and the empath's own desperate hope. On the other side stands the empath's intuition, a raw, primal sense of truth that communicates not in words but in sensations, a knot in the stomach, a sensation of dread, a sense of profound energetic depletion after an encounter. The empath's mind struggles to reconcile two opposite realities, the narcissist's professed love and their perpetual cruelty. To bridge this gap, they construct explanations. They're just stressed. They didn't mean it that way. Their past trauma makes them act this way. These narratives are like desperate attempts to patch a crumbling wall. But with each new cruel moment, the wall fractures further, and the entire illusion threatens to collapse. Then one day it all becomes unbearable. The lie doesn't just fracture, it shatters completely. This is when the truth strikes, and it strikes with force. It arrives like a tidal wave, crashing through every defense, every hope, every excuse. All the ignored gut feelings and moments of doubt converge at once. The truth floods in, washing away the reality they thought they knew, the love story, the future they envisioned, the image of their partner. All of it is revealed to be a meticulously constructed illusion, like a stage set for a play witnessed by only them. This realization is a violent, soul-crushing moment. They finally comprehend that what they called love was merely control. What felt like a deep connection was really just them being exploited for energy. It was never a partnership. It was a parasite feeding on a host. This shattering is not merely uncomfortable. It is a profound existential crisis. It plunges the empath into a period of deep, complex grief. They grieve not only for the loss of the relationship, but for the loss of the reality they believed they were inhabiting. They grieve for the future they envisioned, a future that was built on a foundation of pure fantasy. Most painfully, they grieve for the person they believed the narcissist was, that idealized projection, that phantom lover into whom they poured their own heart and soul. To accept the truth means they must hold a funeral for a ghost, and in doing so they must also grieve for the person they themselves were, the hopeful, trusting, innocent self who was so willing to believe. It is a death of innocence, a brutal disillusionment that can feel like a spiritual apocalypse. The world can lose its color, and trust in others, and most critically in oneself, can be completely shattered. The questions that arise are terrifying. If this love wasn't real, what does that reveal about my judgment? If I was so easily deceived, am I a fool? If my kindness was used as a weapon against me, is it safe to be kind? The narcissist, sensing this monumental internal shift with their predatory intuition, becomes more desperate. They are a master puppeteer who suddenly feels the strings go slack and the panic is palpable. They will escalate their tactics in a frantic attempt to regain control and pull the empath back into the shared delusion. The love bombing may return with feverish intensity, a flood of affection, and promises designed to remind the empath of the good times and reactivate their hope. If that fails, the manipulation will turn dark. The guilt tripping becomes more profound, accusing the empath of being cold, cruel, and unforgiving. The gaslighting becomes more extreme, designed to make the empath believe that this moment of clarity is actually a moment of madness. They may engineer crises, threaten self-harm, or launch smear campaigns, all in a desperate attempt to generate a reaction. Any reaction that will prove they still have an emotional hold. This leaves the empath in an agonizing state of limbo, a place of profound disorientation. They are caught between two hells, the familiar, soul-destroying prison of the relationship and the terrifying, unknown wilderness of a life without it. This is the dark night of the soul for the empath. It is a period of immense internal struggle where they must choose over and over again between the comforting lie and the terrifying truth. The choice is not easy because choosing the truth means consciously walking through the fire of their deepest fears, the fear of being alone, the fear of being unlovable, the fear of having wasted years of their life on an illusion. Yet it is only by choosing to walk through this fire that they can be cauterized and reborn. The awakening is not a gentle process. It is a violent expulsion from a toxic dream, a brutal but necessary birth into a reality that is, for the first time, truly their own. I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever experienced a moment of clarity where you suddenly perceived a pattern in a relationship that had been invisible to you before? A moment where your perception shifted and you could no longer unsee the truth? If this resonates with you, comment below with the word clarity. Let's acknowledge the courage it takes to see what we are not supposed to see. This shattering, however, is not an end. It is a necessary demolition before a new foundation can be laid. The old self, built on a foundation of illusion, must fall. In the next part, we will journey into the most feared and misunderstood landscape of the human psyche, the place where the raw materials for this new, unbreakable self are found, the shadow. To understand the empath's deep transformation from an empty shell to a powerful being, we must examine the most feared and misunderstood part of the psyche, the shadow. It is the uncharted territory of the soul, the psychic cellar where we imprison every aspect of ourselves that we have been conditioned to deny. It is the repository of our disowned instincts, our repressed emotions, and our forbidden power. It holds every part that our family, our society, and ultimately we ourselves have deemed unacceptable. Our anger, our aggression, our so-called selfishness, our untamed joy, our magnificent ambition. For the empath, whose very identity has been constructed around being good, kind, giving, and selfless, the shadow is not just a dark room. It is a terrifying and forbidden continent. The journey into its depths is the most crucial and courageous act of their lives. From a young age, the empath is conditioned to believe that their survival depends on a form of self-amputation. Their sensitivity, their greatest gift, is often treated as a liability. They are told they are too emotional, Their powerful expressions of feeling are labeled as excessive. Their innate sense of justice, which flares into a hot, clarifying anger in the face of unfairness, is dismissed as a tantrum or a lack of control. Their deep need for solitude to recharge their sensitive nervous system is interpreted as personal rejection. Their first tentative attempts at setting healthy boundaries are framed as selfish or cruel. To maintain connection and receive love in a world that is often overwhelmed by their depth, they learn a devastating lesson. They must suppress the most vital, life-affirming parts of themselves. They disown their anger. They disown their right to refuse without explanation. They disown their capacity for fierce self-preservation. And most tragically, they often disown their own brilliance, their own power, their own untamed life force because its radiance makes others uncomfortable. These disowned parts do not simply disappear. They are exiled, relegated to the shadow where they exist in a raw, undeveloped, and powerful state. The empath becomes emotionally unbalanced, overdeveloped in their capacity for compassion, and dangerously underdeveloped in their capacity for self-protection. This internal imbalance sends out a silent, unconscious signal into the world, a signal that is heard with perfect clarity by those who hunt for such vulnerabilities. The narcissist, in this sense, is not an accident that befalls the empath. They are an inevitability. They are the catalyst that the soul has drawn in to force a confrontation with its own missing half. The narcissist, who has no healthy relationship with their own inner world, uses the empath as a dumping ground for their own disowned shadow. The narcissist's rage, their shame, their bottomless inadequacy are projected onto the empath, and the empath, with their absorbent nature and their pre-existing belief that they are somehow flawed or excessive, unconsciously accepts these projections as their own. They find themselves feeling ashamed for things they didn't do, and deeply guilty for the narcissist's unhappiness. They become not only the carrier of their own repressed shadow, but a living container for the narcissists as well. This is an unbearable psychological burden, a form of emotional poisoning that leads to chronic anxiety, depression, physical illness, and a complete erosion of self-worth. The awakening is the moment the empath's psyche finally rejects this poison. The process of shadow integration is the journey of consciously descending into that psychic cellar, not to condemn what is there, but to liberate it. It is the act of reclaiming those disowned parts not as monstrous flaws, but as exiled fragments of their own essential power. This is not about becoming a cruel or narcissistic person. It is about becoming a whole person. The first and most crucial treasure to be reclaimed from the darkness is the empath's anger. For years they have feared this anger, viewing it as a destructive, dangerous force. But the anger they reclaim is not the petty, controlling rage of the narcissist. It is a clean, sacred fire. It is the part of the psyche that roars, "I will not be violated. My dignity matters. My boundaries are non-negotiable." When this fire is rekindled, it does not burn the world down. It burns away the fog of confusion and gaslighting. It is a clarifying flame that provides the heat and light needed to see the truth with unshakable certainty. It is the energy of profound self-respect made manifest. Alongside this sacred fire, the empath must reclaim what they were taught was selfishness. They must learn the truth of healthy self-care. After a lifetime of equating their self-worth with self-sacrifice, they must understand that their own well-being is not a luxury, but a non-negotiable prerequisite for a healthy life. They must learn that their energy is a finite and precious resource, not an infinite well for others to drink from. They learn to prioritize their own needs not out of arrogance, but out of a profound and loving stewardship of their own soul. This is terrifying at first. The act of saying no to a request, of choosing their own peace over another's comfort, can trigger immense waves of conditioned guilt. But with each act of self-prioritization, the muscle of self-worth grows stronger. With each boundary they hold, the foundation of their new sovereign self becomes more solid. But the journey into the shadow is not only about reclaiming the so-called darkness, it is also about reclaiming the disowned light. The empath must also confront the brilliant, magnificent parts of themselves that they were forced to hide. This is their hidden power. The ambition they were told was wrong for a caring person, the passionate creative energy they were taught to quiet down, and the sharp intelligence they learned to conceal so they wouldn't threaten others. They must give themselves permission to be brilliant, to be powerful, to take up space, to be excessive. They must realize that they were taught to shrink not because they were flawed, but because their full radiance threatened the fragile egos of those around them. As the empath integrates these exiled parts, the sacred fire of their anger, the deep wisdom of their self-respect, the brilliant light of their untamed power, something new begins to form within their psyche. It is the emergence of an inner guardian, a guardian of the soul. This is not an aggressive or hostile part of the self. It is a calm, centered, and discerning consciousness that becomes the new core of their being. This inner guardian is the product of their integrated wholeness. It possesses the empath's innate compassion, but this compassion is now tempered with the wisdom of the shadow. It can feel for another's pain without taking responsibility for it. It can love deeply without losing itself. This guardian is the keeper of the boundaries. It does not need to shout or fight. It simply knows with absolute certainty where the self ends and another begins, and it holds that line with a quiet, unshakable resolve. Its sword is sharp awareness, cutting through manipulation before it can take root. Its shield is self-worth, deflecting others' projections. This is the alchemical process that forges something new within the empath, psychological gold. Their sensitivity, once a vulnerability that made them a target, is now transmuted into a powerful tool of perception. They can still feel the emotional states of others, but they no longer absorb them. They can read the subtle energies of a room, the unconscious motivations behind a person's words, the incongruity between a charming smile and a predatory intent. Their empathy has become a finely tuned instrument of truth. They do not need to fight back with the narcissist's weapons of manipulation and deceit. Their power lies in their clarity, their ability to see the truth of a situation with unshakable certainty. They have faced the darkness within themselves, and because of this, they are no longer afraid of the darkness that resides in others. This integrated wholeness is the true source of their newfound strength, a strength that is quiet, grounded, and utterly unbreakable. Once an empath has faced their own darkness and reclaimed their disowned power, their very presence in the world changes. They no longer operate from a place of reaction, but from a center of profound stillness. In the next chapter, you'll discover how this inner stillness becomes the most potent and maddening weapon against the narcissist's chaos. The narcissist's entire psychological structure is built upon a foundation of reaction. They live in a world of external mirrors, regulating their chaotic inner state by observing the effect they have on others. Their fragile sense of self is not generated from within. It is assembled moment by moment from the emotional responses they extract. Praise, admiration, fear, anger, drama. All of it serves as proof that they exist, that they are significant, that they have impact. This emotional feedback, or narcissistic supply, is as essential to them as oxygen. Without it, they face the terrifying prospect of their own inner emptiness, the void they have spent their lives running from. The awakened empath, having journeyed through their own shadow, understands this dynamic not as an intellectual concept, but as a felt reality. They have discovered a place of stillness within themselves, a core of self-possession that is not dependent on external validation or circumstances. From this place, they enact the most devastatingly effective strategy against the narcissist, the power of conscious non-reaction. This is not the passive-aggressive silent treatment, which is itself a form of manipulation designed to provoke a response. Nor is it an emotional numbness born of trauma. It is an active, deliberate, and powerful choice rooted in profound clarity and self-respect. When the empath refuses to engage in the drama, they are not being passive. They are staging a quiet rebellion. They are refusing to play their assigned role in the narcissist's carefully scripted play. The narcissist, expecting a familiar emotional counterpoint, an argument, a defense, tears, an apology, is met with a calm and impenetrable stillness. This silence is not empty. It is filled with the empath's reclaimed self-worth. It communicates something far more terrifying to the narcissist than any angry outburst ever could. You no longer have access to my inner world. Your words have no power here. Your reality is not my reality. I do not require your approval, and I will not carry your projections anymore. Sensing this deep change, the narcissist escalates their tactics in a desperate attempt to regain control and force a reaction. They employ every trick they possess. They might become intensely charming again, attempting to resurrect the way things used to be. They might try to make the empath feel extreme guilt, calling them cold and cruel. They could escalate to threats or spreading lies to punish the empath for pulling away. As a final resort, they might fabricate a crisis, pretending to hit rock bottom to trigger the empath's old compulsion to help and fix things. But the integrated empath sees these maneuvers for what they are, not genuine expressions of emotion, but frantic attempts to plug back into a power source that has been disconnected. Because the empath has done their shadow work, they are no longer susceptible. Their reclaimed anger allows them to hold firm boundaries without guilt. Their healthy self-prioritization allows them to choose their own peace over the narcissist's comfort. Their integrated sensitivity allows them to see through the performance to the manipulative intent beneath. They have learned the crucial lesson that closure, validation, and peace do not come from the narcissist. They can never be obtained from the source of the wound. True closure comes from within, from the moment the empath no longer needs anything from the person who hurt them. Not an apology, not an admission of guilt, not an acknowledgement of the pain they caused. The empath's stillness creates a psychological vacuum for the narcissist. With no emotional energy to feed on, the narcissist is forced into a confrontation with their own disowned shadow, their own inner chaos. This is an unbearable state for them. Their carefully constructed persona begins to fracture under the pressure. Without the empath to regulate their emotions, to absorb their rage and to mirror back a grandiose image of themselves, they begin to unravel. They are left alone in the echo chamber of their own emptiness. The empath's non-reaction is not an act of aggression, but it has the effect of a perfect, unbreakable defense. By simply refusing to participate in the toxic cycle, the empath strips away all of the narcissist's power. They transcend the entire conflict, rendering all of the narcissist's usual tactics useless. When the narcissist's arsenal of manipulation shatters against the empath's wall of stillness, they are forced to confront a terrifying reality. They have lost control. But the final stage of the empath's transformation unleashes something even more devastating than silence. In the next chapter, we explore the ultimate act of psychological liberation, the reclamation of one's own story. For the duration of the toxic relationship, the narcissist acts as the self-appointed author and narrator of the empath's reality. Their power lies not just in their actions, but in their ability to define the meaning of those actions. They are the ones who frame their control as care, their criticism as helpfulness, and their abuse as a consequence of the empath's own flaws. The empath is cast as a character in this narrative, the overly sensitive one, the difficult one, the ungrateful one, the one who is never quite adequate. Gaslighting is the primary tool of this narrative control, a constant rewriting of history that makes the empath doubt their own memory, their own perceptions, and their own sanity. They are living inside a story where they are perpetually in the wrong. The third, and most powerful transformation for the empath is the reclamation of this narrative through the discovery of their authentic, sovereign voice. This is not the reactive voice that once scrambled to explain, defend, or justify itself. That voice was still seeking validation from the narcissist, still playing by the rules of their game. The sovereign voice is entirely different. It speaks not from a place of fear or a need for approval, but from a place of integrated, grounded clarity. It does not seek to argue or convince. It seeks only to state what is true for the self. Jung understood the profound, almost magical power of naming things. To name something is to pull it out of chaos and give it clear meaning. When the awakened empath finally looks at the history of the relationship and says, without seeking permission or validation, "This was manipulation," or "Your behavior was abusive," or "This was not love," they are performing a powerful psychological act. They are taking back the pen. They are firing the narcissist as the narrator of their life and reclaiming the role of author for themselves. This act of naming is devastating to the narcissist because it shatters the very foundation of their control. Their entire persona is built on a distorted narrative that they must compel others to believe. The empath's sovereign voice introduces an unassailable truth that their manipulations cannot penetrate. When the empath states their reality calmly and without emotional charge, the narcissist has nothing to push against. They cannot twist a simple statement of fact like, "Your words were hurtful," in the same way they can twist a tearful emotional reaction. The sovereign voice is not an invitation to a debate. It is a declaration of an established boundary. It says, "I see the truth of what happened, and I will no longer participate in the fiction you have created." This new voice allows the empath to reframe their past. They begin to see that their sensitivity was not a flaw, but an early warning system they were taught to ignore. They see that their desire for connection was not naivety, but a beautiful and healthy human impulse that was exploited. They see that their willingness to forgive was not weakness, but a testament to the depth of their heart. By renaming their experiences, they reclaim their own virtues from the twisted definitions the narcissist imposed upon them. They are no longer the crazy one. They are the one who was telling the truth all along. This reclaiming of the narrative is the final stage of breaking free from the narcissist's psychological gravity. The empath stops orbiting the narcissist's ego and establishes their own center of gravity. Their self-worth is no longer tied to the narcissist's approval or disapproval. They have become their own source of validation. They have stopped looking outside of themselves for a reflection and have found a clear, unwavering sense of self within. This integrated voice, speaking from a place of wholeness and truth, is the sound of true freedom. It is the voice of a soul that has come home to itself, and there is no manipulation on earth that can silence it. With their story reclaimed and their voice restored, the empath moves beyond the battlefield of the relationship itself. They enter a state that is the narcissist's ultimate psychological annihilation, not because it is an attack, but because it is a complete transcendence. In the final chapter, you'll discover why a narcissist's greatest fear is an empath who is truly thriving. The key, final and most profound transformation the empath undergoes is what Carl Jung called individuation. This is more than just healing. It is a great and sacred homecoming. It is the psyche's journey back to its own authentic center. The process of becoming the singular, unique and whole individual one was always meant to be, distinct from the collective unconscious and free from the distorting projections of others. The empath who has navigated the treacherous waters of narcissistic abuse and emerged through the crucible of shadow work, the stillness of non-reaction, and the reclamation of their own voice does not simply return to who they were before. The person they used to be is gone forever, transformed by their painful ordeal. Instead, they become something more, their true, whole self. And this new state of quiet, confident wholeness is the most terrifying thing a narcissist can witness. The narcissist's entire identity is a parasitic construct. It cannot survive in a vacuum. It requires a host. Their sense of self is not generated from within. It is assembled moment by moment from the reflection they see in another's eyes. They must believe they are the main character, the central organizing principle in their partner's universe. Their sense of significance is entirely dependent on the magnitude of their perceived impact. They must be the source of their partner's joy, the cause of their pain, the architect of their success, and the reason for their failure. Even hatred from an ex-partner is a form of supply because it confirms their importance, their unforgettable effect on another's life. Fear, drama, even an angry text, all are forms of supply. All of it feeds the desperate, fragile narrative that they matter, that their existence has weight and consequence. When the empath thrives, this entire framework of reality collapses into a black hole. Thriving is not merely surviving. Surviving is picking up the pieces, learning to live with the scars. Thriving is a state of radiant growth, a flourishing of the soul that transcends the wound completely. The individuated empath finds new joy, a joy that is generated from within and is not dependent on any external source. They build healthy, reciprocal relationships where energy is exchanged freely and mutually, not drained one way. They discover new passions, resurrect old dreams, and achieve success on their own terms, fueled by their own reclaimed life force. Their light, which was once dimmed and slowly extracted by the narcissist, returns with a brilliance that is dazzling, pure, and for the narcissist, psychologically unbearable. This thriving terrifies the narcissist because it proves their deepest, most concealed fear. They were, in the grand scheme of the empath's soul journey, utterly irrelevant. The empath's happiness, their success, their peace. None of it was ever truly contingent on the narcissist. The narcissist was not the sun that gave the empath life. They were merely the eclipse that temporarily blocked it. The empath's growth proves, with chilling finality, that the intense, dramatic, all-consuming relationship was not a defining chapter, but a painful and ultimately liberating preface to a much richer story. For an ego built on the fantasy of being indispensable, this realization is not just a rejection. It is psychological annihilation. It reduces them to a footnote in a story where they insisted on being the title. They look at the thriving empath, and for the first time they see no reflection of themselves at all. There is no anger to feed on, no sadness to feel powerful over, no drama to prove their significance. There is only a serene, self-contained wholeness. It is like screaming into a void and hearing no echo. In the face of the empath's peace, the narcissist becomes a ghost, a phantom, in a world that no longer acknowledges their power. The thriving empath embodies a state of being that unites the opposites within their own psyche. They hold both a deep, boundless compassion and a set of fierce, diamond-hard boundaries. They are both open-hearted and powerfully discerning. They are capable of profound love without losing themselves and profound self-protection without closing themselves off from the world. Their boundaries are no longer angry walls built for defense in a time of war. They are the natural, peaceful, and effortless expression of their self-worth, like the banks of a river that guide its powerful flow. These are not boundaries that aggressively shout "go away," but boundaries that calmly and immutably declare, "Here is the sacred space of my being. I will honor it, and I require that you honor it as well." This integrated wholeness makes the empath completely and permanently immune to future manipulation. They no longer emit the energetic frequency of a wound that a predator can detect. Instead, they radiate a quiet confidence and a grounded self-possession that naturally repels those who seek to exploit and effortlessly attracts those who seek to connect authentically. Yet, on this high summit of consciousness, a final and subtle challenge awaits. It is the last shadow the ego casts. Having endured so much and achieved such a profound transformation, the empath faces the temptation to create a new, refined identity out of the experience itself. The ego, in its endless quest for significance, may try to build a new fortress, the fortress of the healed one, the survivor, the wise one who has seen the darkness. This is a golden cage. It can lead to a subtle form of spiritual pride, a quiet condescension toward those still trapped in unconscious patterns. It can create a new form of separation where the journey becomes a story to be told for validation rather than a wisdom to be embodied in humility. The truly individuated empath recognizes and sidesteps this final trap. Their journey has taught them the most profound lesson of all. The ultimate mark of true power is an ever-deepening humility. They look at the narcissist and at others still struggling in toxic dynamics, and they no longer see monsters or fools. They see souls trapped in their own deep wounds, acting out their own unresolved trauma. They remember their own journey from unconsciousness to awareness, not with the pride of an achievement, but with a deep, knowing compassion for the struggle. Their heart breaks open, not with judgment, but with a wise and boundless sorrow for the human condition itself. This is the final purification. It is the shift from "I survived" to "I understand." This humility is what makes their wisdom accessible, their presence healing, and their strength safe for others. Their healing isn't just for them. It helps everyone by becoming their true selves. Their healing creates a ripple effect. They are breaking a chain of unhealthy relationship patterns that has been passed down in their family for generations. Every time they hold a boundary or speak their truth, they are healing the old wounds of their family's past. They are doing the work that their parents and grandparents couldn't do. They aren't just reclaiming their own life. They are changing the course of their family's future, guiding it away from a legacy of pain and toward a healthier path. In the end, the most dangerous person to a narcissist is not the one who seeks revenge, for revenge would still keep them shackled to the past, forever defined by the battle. The most dangerous person is the empath who has so completely healed and reconstructed their own self that the narcissist ceases to occupy any significant space in their psyche at all. The ultimate victory is not the destruction of the other, but the complete and total resurrection of the self. This resurrected self is not dangerous because it is aggressive, but because it is absolutely, unshakably, and radiantly authentic. And in the face of such genuine embodied light, the narcissist's hollow darkness and intricate illusion simply cannot survive. Their power dissolves, not with a bang, but with the quiet, final, and indifferent turning of a page. You've witnessed the path from a shattered self to a resurrected one. If you're ready to begin your own journey of individuation, be sure to click on the next video. Your greatest work, becoming who you truly are, is just beginning.